Hollow Earth. The Earth is literally hollow, and there is a whole other world of giant people inside, and/or lizard people, and/or just another advanced civilization. Flat Earth. The Earth is flat. It's not round. 9/11 was an inside job. Our government did it themselves for reasons X, Y, or Z. The female orgasm. The clitoris is a real place to be visited. Pee is stored in the balls. These are all things that have yet to be proven, but people love to argue over every single one of them. And to an extent, I totally get it. I definitely, just like every other person who was 20 at one point in time, went into a YouTube K-hole, if you will, where you just watch conspiracy video after conspiracy video after conspiracy video, and it's always these people who do a lot of misdirection. A lot of like, oh, well, this scientist said this, and it can be interpreted like this, and they always kind of like oversell it. There's a real famous documentary, I think it's called Zeitgeist, the Zeitgeist. You know which one I'm talking about. Don't let the fact that I don't know how to read or pronounce that word properly make you think that my opinion is any less valid. Also, my opinion's not that valid, so feel free to do that. But that documentary had another documentary come out after it, which pretty much debunked just about everything that they said, especially everything that they had to say about the Bible in general. Like a lot of the claims that they made no sense. A lot of the historical Egyptian claims that they made as well, as far as old ancient Egyptian religions and what was actually said in them, was super far off. And that was just as entertaining as the Zeitgeist. I think I said it right that time. So that's exciting. And I'm just going to give you my opinion on all these conspiracy theories in general and a good way to think about them. Because I think it is important to note, and I always think that this is a very kind of pinnacle point that happens in every single person's life. When you are 100% positive and convinced of something, like you know something for fact, like this is this, X plus Y equals Z. You know this for fact. And then something comes along and you find out that that's not true. You find out that the thing that you were 100% positive of, that there was no doubt in your mind because you knew for a fact, ended up, sorry, I'm drinking Coca-Cola right now, ended up not being true at all. And that's something that's pretty jarring. And it definitely makes you re-look at most things in your life. Like, oh God, like what else is there? Like Santa's not real or whatever that thing was for you. I think a very common one is you have this very heroic image of your parents, and then one day you discover that they're just normal people with normal people flaws as well. Your dad's not the strongest person in the world, and your mom's not the most noble person in the world. Also, my dad could definitely still beat up your dad. And actually, my parents are still kind of my heroes, but my parents rule. But most people find out that their parents don't rule. I didn't. My parents are great. So with keeping that in mind, whenever I hear these outrageous conspiracy theories, and I say outrageous because they seem so jarring at first, I try not to just kind of like brush them off. I try to like be like, okay, like what is there to it? And I know a lot of people were like, oh yeah, like science is the answer. Like, oh, the Earth's not flat because of science. Well, then they just take science's word for it across the board. And I think that one of the reasons that that's really dangerous is like, there's, we thought bloodletting was a thing. The guy who discovered germs was actually put in an insane asylum for, being crazy. Because they're like, he was trying to convince people, there's that movie 12 Monkeys where they word it so well. I think it's Brad Pitt who's like, he was trying to convince people that there was these little tiny like animals that made people sick. And that does sound crazy, but it's actually true. It's bacteria and viruses and whatnot. So just because something sounds super outrageous, or sometimes something that goes against your political compass, like something happens in the media that you're just like, whether it's something that's racially fueled or has to do with human rights, or your thoughts on abortion, and some fact or piece of information comes out that is counter to your point of view, I think a lot of people will tend to dismiss it. And instead of listening to what they have to say, they immediately start trying to find the counter arguments. And I think that everyone should be trying to counter-argue their own counter-arguments first. I try to debunk myself more often than not. Now, I don't want this already to sound like I'm trying to be like, no, give conspiracy theories a chance because they're probably right. No. I'm saying give conspiracy theories a chance so you can prove that they're very, very likely to be wrong, at least most of them in my opinion. Things like flat Earth, for example, there's not even getting into like the science of why I think the Earth is round, because that's one of those things where like there's this experiment you can do, but it's just like, okay, well, you have to take my word for it that I did that experiment. Like, just Google what experiments to do, and you can go prove that the Earth is round yourself. But without even having to get into that, I think about how many people would need to be involved to pull off that conspiracy. How many people would have to know that the Earth is flat and still try to convince people that it's round? Like, people who are involved in, any sort of like anything to do with like GPS and like maps and stuff like that, and any of that technology, you have to take that the Earth is round into account to get these calculations. You also have to take into account like, like I have friends in the Air Force, and they've been in these jets that go crazy high to where you do get to see the arc of the Earth. I'm not talking about like, they're flying an airplane from, here to Colorado or something like that, where the argument is, oh, like the arc of the Earth right there is an illusion, which is an argument that people make. No. I mean, these people go crazy high up in the air and you can see the arc of the Earth, which is something that like a civilian most likely would not get to do unless I don't know. I actually always think it would be really cool to like do a GoFundMe and raise like a bunch of money to take like one of the top flat Earth people, whoever that would be, and like fly them super high up in the air so they could just like see it and then see if that helps the cause anymore. But one of the things that I do want to get away from is like telling people who are like flat earthers, or they believe, whatever, the Earth is hollow, that they're an idiot, because they're not necessarily an idiot. It could be argued that you are believing blindly what, the scientists are telling you, as much as you can say they are blindly believing what these quote unquote flat Earth experts, who usually aren't scientists at all, very, very, very much so, more often than not, they're not scientists, are telling them. And it wouldn't be the first time that, it was just like a normal person that was right, and, the government or the world that be the whatever power it is, was trying to pull the wool over people's eyes with, there's been all kinds of mass testing and stuff like that on people. And it's really sketchy when you get into like how screwed up specifically the United States government has been to its people, but that goes for all governments. There's no exceptions. I'm sure Canada has done some sort of weird thing with maple syrup or something. I don't know, but I'm assuming that, they've done something terrible, because people in general, in my opinion, are more likely to be terrible than not terrible, especially when given power. And every nation has a hierarchy of power, so probably some terrible things going on there. I will say, as silly as they might sound, I will say it is really hard when you hear something very, very silly, like the Earth is hollow and there's a bunch of beings that live in it, and you can't see it on the map because they covered it up, and there's a big hole in the side of the Earth, and you think to yourself, well, certainly there's been a bunch of people who've gone to that part of the world, and you're just, they'll counter argument with that with like, no, they just haven't, because they like have it blocked off or whatever. And when you reach like this as funny as it would be, this Arctic wall of logic that you might run into arguing with someone like that, keep in mind that people are just going to most likely accept whatever supports their own theory. And that's you included, that's me included. If you go out and seek information on why the Earth is round, you can find information that in your mind proves that the Earth is round, but it actually doesn't. Sometimes it's optical illusions. Sometimes, like I said earlier, with like, you see the arc of the Earth when you're in an airplane and stuff like that. There's all sorts of tests that people are just like, oh, it's real obvious, but in reality, it's not necessarily proving that the Earth is round. So it's, there's guilt on both parties. I'm not saying that the Earth isn't round. It's definitely round. The Earth is round. I think, a good example of the way that someone can get kind of trapped in this mindset of like, believing some of these conspiracy theories on either side. Because I think that there is very likely things that the mass media believes, the mass of people that believe, the majority of people believe that it's not true. That maybe is a lie. I don't know. Maybe there is some true conspiracy theories that are worldwide. But let's take the moon landing, for example. I remember the first time that I heard this theory, it made sense to me just because it's like, yeah, we were racing Russia. And it would make sense to like lie and cheat and be like, oh no, we already made it there, when we didn't actually make it there. Because, when two people are racing, someone wants to win. And now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, that's a whole lot of effort for that victory, but whatever. And they talk about like the flag moving, and I remember like thinking like, yeah, there's no wind on the moon. I didn't even know that there was no wind on the moon. But when I heard that, I was like, yeah, there isn't any wind on the moon. Why was it waving? And it's like, you find out later that they had a special flag that was used on all the Apollo missions, where it had rods in the side of the flag that kept it, erect, is the word that I'm going to stick with. Or like the what was the other one? There's no stars in the sky, and the reason is, if you've ever taken photos with like an actual camera, and especially back then, with the exposure settings, they wouldn't show up in the background, things like that. And you could, I'm sure if I took the time to like Google a list of all the reasons that there is and isn't, they're all pretty, not easily debunked, but they are most certainly all debunked. I think a very common one is, and I actually had a teacher bring this into school. He brought a conspiracy theory into school. It's the Lincoln similarities to the Kennedy assassination, like how they all had like, his secretary's name was Joe Schmo, and Lincoln's secretary's name was Schmo Joe, and they kissed one, whatever it is. There's like a crazy long list of all these very, very coincidental facts about them, as far as like the year that they were born and the vice versa, all sorts of things that connect them. But the truth is, if you think about a game like, what is it, like 6 Degrees to Kevin Bacon or whatever, if you go looking for similarities between point A and point B, you're going to find them. There's a great theory, it's called the Bible Code, and it's, if you take all the spaces in the Bible and you take them all out, and then you jumble all the words together into one gigantic massive word on the page, you can treat it like a crossword puzzle, and on one page you can find the words Antichrist with Hitler and Napoleon and Genghis Khan. They're all like on the same page, and it's just like, okay, first of all, you can find all this. Like that's actually like there's pages, there's books written about like all the crazy things that it, didn't necessarily predict, because it's not predictive. We don't know the answer to what to look for in the page until it already happened, but they'll show up in the same pages. And one thing to consider is the fact that the Bible has been translated out of dead languages, so we definitely got a bunch of stuff wrong. Also, the Bible was not written in American letters, so once again, it wasn't written that like, perfectly, that they're like, oh, one day this is going to be translated into English, and the English letters are going to mean this, this, and this, and then I'm going to arrange it to where if you take out all the spaces, like there's so many bullshit steps that you have to go through to get to that. But the point of me bringing that up is, you can find really, really crazy coincidental things if you look hard enough. And that's what I see a lot of the flat earth people do. And that's what I see a lot of just people in general do to argue their political standpoint, whether they're pro this, anti that, or anti pro this, or any combination that you could possibly want. And that obviously bleeds into, our lives in general. For example, I know that Coca-Cola is really bad for me. So I just buy Coca-Cola that only comes in glass bottles because it makes me drink less, and it makes me feel less guilty about drinking soda, even though I know it's super toxic and I get chronic kidney stones. So we're all constantly self-justifying. I think that's human nature. So it makes sense that we would do that with our opinions in general. So basically what I'm saying is, conspiracy theories, though the majority of the time I think that they are absolutely insane, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're all wrong, or that necessarily any of them are wrong. Kind of. I am 100% convinced that the earth is round, and I think that the amount of people that it would take to pull off a hoax like that across the world and no one's spilling the beans. You mean to tell me that all the people that are involved in NASA and the government and all this stuff are just not, because I know people who can't keep secrets. And I know people who can't keep secrets who end up working in these companies. I have a friend that does work for NASA. I remember he made a joke about his dad being a rocket scientist. Like, it's like a thing like, oh, your dad's a rocket scientist. His dad's actually a rocket scientist for NASA. And then he got a job at NASA. And he is definitely someone who I think would like post on Twitter like, P.S. the earth is actually flat. Just found out. Like he would not keep that a secret. And we're talking about like an insane amount of people that would have to keep that a secret. So that alone, for me, kind of kills the whole flat earth thing. But whatever. I'm sure you can list out a bajillion reasons why you are convinced that the earth is flat. I'm going to get those comments, and that's fine. By all means, leave those comments and discuss amongst yourselves in the comments whether you think the Earth is flat or round or the moon landing is fake. And I'm sure that there's details that, you're going to be like, oh, well, this means this and this means this. And it's going to be very articulate and well thought out and involve all sorts of big words that everyone's going to be Googling. But at the end of the day, just because you have a soundproof looking opinion doesn't mean that you're actually right. And I think one of the main things that I usually take into consideration when it comes to conspiracy theories is how complicated and articulate it would be to pull the wool over every single person's eyes in the world. Of course, with the exception of, let's face it, the majority of people who believe conspiracy theories are not scientists, not doctors, not people who are considered just like particularly gifted in basic intelligence. And I'm not saying that like there's not geniuses that live in their parents' basement, and there's not geniuses that work a 9 to 5, and there's not geniuses that have a very low, lying, engineer degree. I'm just saying it seems more often than not these experts on it seem to have just very basic normal jobs. They're not, their jobs does not signify their intelligence. And I'm not saying that your job creates, and I'm not saying that like you can judge someone's intelligence just based on their job, but I think that there is obviously a correlation between the two that is not bulletproof, but it does exist. And it'd be pretty bizarre if more often than not, the people who do not have those really advanced jobs seem to be the people who know what's going on. So anyhow, that's my little flat earth rant. Just FYI, in case you're wondering, my opinion on each one. I don't think that the moon landing was fake. I do not think that the earth is flat. I know for a fact that the clitoris does not actually exist. If it did, then, you know what I mean? So a girl I met would have had an orgasm, right? Like I'm a good kisser. I'm a good kisser. That's all I'm saying. I do not think the earth is hollow. 9/11 being an inside job, that is one where I'm like, man, what is up with that other building that fell for no reason? So I think that there is some conspiracy in that one, but I don't necessarily believe that it was like our government that did it. I don't know. I don't know. That one's crazy. There's a lot of information on that where I'm like, whoa. But once again, that's one that I'm not on one side or the other. If it came out 100% true that was not an inside job and this explains it, I don't think I would be surprised. And if it came out that it was 100% true that it was an inside job to like some extent, or like that we were in cahoots with someone else or someone else was in cahoots and we knew about it, I also probably would be that surprised. I just feel like I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, that's a pretty flip-floppy one for me. If there's any other conspiracies that you're wondering what my opinion are on them, feel free to leave a comment or give me some information for me to look at. If you feel like, because I consider myself a pretty open-minded person, if you have some information that you think I should look into to see the truth, leave it in the comment. That's engagement, and that'll drive up views, and then I'll get paid for it. I like that. Conspiracy, me getting paid on YouTube is, I do it for the money. Here's a conspiracy theory. I made this video because I thought it'd be clickable, and there's no skating in it. But Dale made a channel that's not skateboarding, and I want to make a channel that's not skateboarding because I have other stuff to me, not a lot, but I have other things to me. So I am going to start posting on another channel. I will link the link to that channel in my bio, in the info, the description. So if you want to go subscribe to my other channel, there might not be anything there yet. I am already working on other videos, though. I do want to talk about things that are a little bit more political. I do want to talk about things that are a little bit more off the wall. I want to talk about just things. Do I think love is real? Is happiness an inside job? Is male baldness really that bad? So yeah, go ahead and follow that if you want, and then that will probably be a very frequently uploaded channel for me because it's pretty easy for me to hatch out these videos, and it won't just be me sitting here and talking. I do plan to go out and do some experiments. I do want to do a flat earth experiment video where I literally will go out and do all the experiments that people tell you to do from both sides and just draw a new conclusion from there. Maybe it'll be different. Anywho, this has been a video that I made.